Welcome back to English Unfiltered, the podcast where we explore real conversations in English. I am Alex, and today we are doing a deep dive into something that, well, I think pretty much every single language learner on Earth has experienced at least once.
And I am Jamie. And yeah, it is a incredibly universal, incredibly frustrating experience, honestly.
Right. So, okay, picture this. You are sitting comfortably on your couch, watching a movie in English. Or maybe you are listening to an interview with someone you really admire.
Getting totally lost in it.
Exactly. And you are tracking with it perfectly. I mean, you are laughing at the subtle jokes, you are following the complex plot twists, you are picking up on all that subtle nuance.
Which feels amazing.
It does. In that moment, you feel like an absolute linguistic genius. You are sitting there thinking, wow, I really have the hang of this. I am basically fluent.
It is a very validating feeling because you are completely dialed into the language and it just flows. It feels effortless.
But then, right the very next morning, you step outside your front door, you go to a local coffee shop, or even worse, you step into a meeting at work.
The stakes get higher.
Way higher. And it is time for you to actually speak. Someone turns to you and asks a relatively simple question. Maybe they just want your opinion on a new project, and suddenly you just blank.
Total freeze.
The great freeze.
Yeah.
It feels as though every single word you so easily understood 12 hours ago has just like completely evaporated from your brain.
It's just gone.
Yeah. You suddenly feel like you don't even know enough English to form a basic sentence.
Which really is the ultimate language learning paradox. It is this massive, extremely frustrating gap between what we can comprehend when we hear it and what we actually feel capable of producing out loud.
It is the worst feeling.
It is. And when people experience that sudden freeze, they almost universally misdiagnose the root cause of the problem.
Right, because the immediate assumption is always, I just don't know enough, like a lack of data. You stand there in a panic thinking, my vocabulary just isn't big enough yet.
Or, I haven't studied enough advanced grammar structures to, hold my own in this conversation.
Exactly. I need more flashcards.
Right. And that is the exact misconception we are going to dismantle today. The reality is that the problem isn't a lack of knowledge at all.
Which sounds crazy when you are in that frozen moment.
It does, but think about it. Your passive understanding, which is that ability to listen, read, and comprehend the movie that proves the vocabulary, is actually already hardwired into your brain.
Oh, because if I didn't know the word, I wouldn't have understood the movie.
Exactly. The true barrier you are hitting in that coffee shop or in that boardroom is entirely a lack of confidence. It is just disguised as a lack of knowledge.
Okay, wait. I'm going to stop you right there because I want to push back on that claim a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Is it really just confidence? I mean, let's be super practical here. If I am standing in a store and I literally, honestly, do not know the specific English word for, say, receipt or refund, all the confidence in the world isn't going to magically make those syllables appear in my mouth, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't a literal lack of vocabulary physically stop you from communicating?
That is a very fair challenge. But to understand why confidence is actually the culprit in like 90% of these situations, we have to look at the neurological difference between passive recall and active recall.
Passive versus active. Okay, break that down for me.
So when you are on the couch watching that movie, you are using passive recall. The language is flowing to you. Your brain just has to act like a file clerk.
Just sorting things.
Right. It takes the word it hears and just matches it to an existing concept in your memory. It is a very low friction, low energy process for your brain.
Because the word is already provided by the actor on the screen. I just have to, recognize it.
Exactly. You just recognize the file.
Yeah.
But active recall, which is what you do when you are speaking, is an entirely different neurological heavy lift.
Because I have to find the file myself.
You aren't just finding it, you have to build the file from scratch, usually under a time limit, while maintaining eye contact, reading social cues, and, monitoring your own pronunciation.
Oh, wow. That is a lot happening all at once.
The cognitive load, which is basically how much processing power your brain is using, just skyrockets.
I can feel my brain sweating just thinking about it.
Right. And when you add the pressure of wanting to sound intelligent in front of your boss, your amygdala starts to activate.
The amygdala, that's the part of the brain that handles fear, right?
Yes, the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Your brain literally starts to perceive this social pressure as an actual physical threat.
Wait, really? So when we say the great freeze, we are talking about a literal physiological response.
Yeah.
Like my body thinks it's in danger.
It is a literal hijacking of the brain. When that amygdala fires up, it diverts processing power away from the prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is where the language is.
Exactly. That is where your active vocabulary is stored. So the words are physically in your brain, but the anxiety literally cuts off your access to them.
That makes the mechanics of this so much clearer. It really feels like, okay, think of it like having a kitchen completely stocked with ingredients.
I like this analogy. Let's hear it.
Right, so you have a kitchen, and because you don't know the specific exact recipe for some five-star gourmet meal, you are entirely paralyzed.
You don't know how to make the masterpiece.
Exactly. You have the bread sitting on the counter, you have the tomatoes in the fridge, which, represent those basic verbs and common nouns you absolutely know.
The words you use every day.
Right. But because you can't instantly whip up a flawless, grammatically complex bruschetta to impress your boss, you just stand there and starve.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. Your brain essentially issues an error message. It scans the situation, realizes it cannot find the fancy beef Wellington recipe.
Which is that eloquent, perfectly conjugated sentence a native speaker might use.
Exactly. And the brain tells you, we don't have what we need to survive this conversation. It creates this incredibly convincing illusion of a deficit.
Completely ignoring the fact that a basic tomato sandwich would perfectly satisfy the hunger.
Exactly.
Or, in this context, it would perfectly communicate the core message you actually need to get across.
And that is where the confidence piece comes back in, you see? The deficit isn't in your vocabulary.
It's in the trust.
Yes. It's the deficit in your trust that the basic ingredients you already possess are actually enough to handle the situation. The pressure to be perfect makes you doubt the very tools you use to flawlessly understand a 2-hour movie the night before.
Which naturally leads us to this behavioral trap that I think so many adult learners fall into.
The avoidance.
The avoidance, exactly. Because that freeze feels so terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody likes the physical sensation of their amygdala hijacking their brain.
It's awful.
It is. So we develop these avoidance strategies. We tell ourselves, well, my ingredients clearly aren't good enough yet, so I will just close the restaurant.
I'll wait until I'm ready.
Yes.
Huh.
We decide to wait. We tell ourselves we will finally start speaking when we memorize another 1,000 words, or when we, completely master the past perfect continuous tense.
It is the pursuit of the mythical ready moment.
The mythical ready moment. And it is such an alluring trap. I know I have done this myself, where I think I can just front load all the hard work in a safe, isolated environment.
Just you and a textbook.
Right. I will just study the grammar books until I am completely bulletproof, and then, only then, I will open my mouth in public.
The psychology behind that is fascinating, actually, because it is deeply tied to how adult learners protect their egos.
Oh, ego protection. That makes sense.
Yeah, because as adults, we are highly competent in our native languages, right?
Yeah.
We are used to navigating really complex professional and social situations with nuance.
We sound smart in our own language.
Exactly. We sound intelligent. So when you suddenly strip away that advanced vocabulary in English, you are forced to sound much simpler, almost childlike.
Which is a massive blow to the ego.
A huge blow. Nobody wants to feel like a beginner again.
So this studying the endless grammar drills, the huge vocabulary lists, it is essentially just an ego protection mechanism.
Pretty much.
We are hoarding ingredients because we are terrified of anyone seeing us make a messy sandwich.
That's exactly it. And furthermore, our traditional education systems have deeply conditioned us to avoid mistakes at all costs.
Oh, the red pen.
The red pen.
Yeah.
You take a written test in school, and every single error gets a giant red mark. You are literally penalized for trying something and failing.
So we naturally transpose that academic framework right on to language learning. We think language is a subject to be mastered through study before it can be used.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of what language actually is.
Right, because language isn't an academic subject at all, is it? I mean, it's much closer to a physical motor skill.
It really is.
It feels a lot less like memorizing historical dates for a history exam, and much more like trying to learn a highly complex video game.
Oh, I love the video game comparison.
Right, because you can't learn how to play a game by sitting on your couch reading the developer's source code for 6 months before you ever touch the controller.
That would be absurd.
Completely absurd. At some point, you just have to pick up the controller, press the wrong buttons, walk your character into a wall a few times, and just fail.
Fail until the muscle memory starts to kick in.
Exactly.
And the muscle memory only develops through the friction of actual interaction. The obsession with being perfectly ready stems from fundamentally misunderstanding the goal of language.
How so?
Well, when you are reading the source code, your goal is basically knowing everything. You want to possess total knowledge before you take action.
Right.
But the goal of language isn't knowing everything.
The goal is simply communicating something.
Yes. Passing the message. Think about your game analogy. If you pick up the controller and awkwardly, slowly navigate your character to the next level, you played the game.
Was it a speed run by a professional gamer? No.
No. But you achieved the objective. In a real-world conversation, if you use broken grammar and a limited vocabulary to successfully figure out where the train station is, you communicated.
The connection happened.
A connection happened. That is the win.
Okay, I really love the idea of shifting the goalpost from knowing everything to communicating something. It takes an immense amount of pressure off.
It should.
But I need to challenge this again.
I'm ready.
Because we have to look at the professional stakes here.
Yeah.
If the goal is simply to communicate something without waiting for perfect grammar, I have a real fear about how that actually plays out in the real world.
Let's hear it. What's the scenario?
Let's go back to that boardroom scenario. Let's say my CEO asks for my feedback on a major new initiative.
Okay, high stakes.
High stakes. If my strategy is to just use the absolute basics, the simple ingredients sitting right there on the counter, and I just look at the CEO and say, I like it, or it is good, I am going to sound incredibly uneducated. It might literally hurt my career to sound that basic in a professional environment. Aren't people going to judge me for not having complex, nuanced thoughts?
That is the exact fear that keeps professionals completely paralyzed.
Because it's a real fear.
It is a very valid anxiety, but this is where we have to observe how native English speakers actually manage their own cognitive load in high-stakes environments.
Wait, native speakers get this too?
Of course. Native speakers do not instantly launch into perfectly formatted, eloquently complex paragraphs the second they are asked a difficult question.
That's true, I guess. They usually pause, or they stumble a bit while they gather their thoughts.
Exactly. They use what linguists often call bridge phrases or filler phrases. And this, honestly, is one of the most actionable strategies you can take away from this conversation.
Okay, bridge phrases. Give me an example.
So you do not need to leap instantly from the question to a highly complex answer. You use incredibly simple, basic phrases to buy your brain processing time.
To buy time.
Right. If the CEO asks for your opinion, a native speaker might say, that is an interesting point, or let me think about that for a second, or even just, I need to review the details.
Oh, I see. Those phrases are incredibly basic. I mean, they're just 3 or 4 very common words.
Very simple ingredients.
But they don't sound uneducated at all. They actually sound measured and professional.
Exactly. And they serve a crucial mechanical function in the conversation. By deploying a simple bridge phrase, you keep the conversational channel open.
You don't just stare at them silently.
Right. You signal to the other person that you are engaged, which prevents that awful, awkward silence. But more importantly, because those simple phrases are already deep in your muscle memory, saying them requires almost zero cognitive effort.
Which keeps the amygdala calm.
You got it.
You aren't triggering the fight or flight response because you aren't straining to translate a $10 word. You use a $1 phrase to buy yourself 10 seconds of safe, calm thinking time.
And that 10 seconds is usually all your prefrontal cortex actually needs to access the real vocabulary you want to use.
That is amazing. It just completely redefines our understanding of fluency.
It really does. We tend to imagine fluency as having this massive encyclopedic dictionary uploaded into our brains where we can just pull out obscure vocabulary words on command without even blinking.
Right, we think fluency basically equals volume of knowledge. The more words I know, the more fluent I am.
But true fluency has very little to do with the size of your vocabulary.
Really?
Really. Fluency is about flow. It is the natural, frictionless use of the basic tools you already possess. If you only know 500 words in English, but you can deploy them smoothly without panic.
And use those bridge phrases to navigate the gaps.
Exactly. If you can do that, you are a highly effective communicator.
You are making the sandwich with what you have, and you're handing it to the person without apologizing for not having caviar.
That is a perfect way to put it. And the beautiful thing about this process is that it is a self-reinforcing loop.
How so?
Well, the more you use those simple phrases, the more you just say, let me get back to you on that, instead of freezing up and staring blankly, the more your brain learns that the environment is actually safe.
Oh, because nothing bad happened.
Right. The friction disappears. Yeah. Your brain stops sending that error message because it realizes, oh, wait, the basic sandwich actually worked. We survived the conversation, Nobody laughed at us.
And that survival builds genuine confidence over time.
Exactly. And as we established at the very beginning, confidence is the actual engine of language.
Right.
Once the confidence is there, the amygdala stays quiet. And all that passive vocabulary you absorb from the movies and podcasts finally becomes accessible to you in real time.
That makes so much sense. You cannot reach the advanced, eloquent stages of English without heavily relying on the basics first.
You have to be willing to be a beginner. You have to be willing to sound simple occasionally and to trust the ingredients you already have.
This has been such a paradigm-shifting deep dive today.
Yeah.
Let's just synthesize the core mechanics of what we've unpacked, because the implications here are so freeing for anyone actively trying to learn English right now.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at that incredibly frustrating disconnect, right? That paradox of understanding complex media perfectly, but freezing when asked a simple question in public.
And we identified that the freeze is not a lack of data, it's a literal physiological response. The cognitive load of active recall triggers the threat response in the brain, which physically shuts down access to your vocabulary.
Right. And because that feels so deeply uncomfortable, especially for adult learners who, hate feeling incompetent, we fall into the trap of perfectionism.
We hoard vocabulary.
We hoard the words. We sit on the couch reading the video game source code, waiting for a magical ready moment that doesn't actually exist, all because we are terrified of making a mistake.
We completely forget that the ultimate goal is not to prove how much we know, but simply to pass the message, to connect.
Absolutely. And finally, we looked at the tactical application of this mindset shift. Instead of waiting for perfection, we can embrace the power of the basics.
Using those bridge phrases.
Right. We can use simple, reliable bridge phrases to manage our cognitive load, buy ourselves thinking time, and keep the conversation flowing without triggering that panic response.
Because true fluency isn't about the size of the dictionary in your head. It is the courage to smoothly and naturally use the tools you already have.
So to everyone listening to this right now, the most important takeaway is to trust your current abilities. You already possess far more knowledge than you give yourself credit for.
The words are there.
They are. The ingredients are sitting right there in your kitchen. Stop waiting for the perfect 5-star recipe to magically appear in your mind before you participate.
Take the immense pressure off your own shoulders, step into the conversation, and just start making the sandwich.
Rely on your basic phrases. Accept that your delivery might be a little messy or unpolished at first, and watch how rapidly your confidence and your fluency begins to grow.
It is all about picking up the controller and just playing the game.
It really is. And as we wrap this up, this whole psychological trap of waiting to be perfectly ready before we even try, it really goes so much deeper than just learning English.
Oh, absolutely. It applies to everything.
It highlights how frequently we let the fear of not being perfectly competent stop us from taking the first step. So we want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder today.
If fluency in a new language simply comes from having the courage to use the basic, imperfect tools you already have,
what other goals, projects, or skills in your life are you currently postponing just because you are waiting for a ready moment that doesn't actually exist?
that's a great question to leave on.
It really is. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time on English Unfiltered.
See you next time.